What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Swap Media YouTube channel. My name is Barnard as usual, and I'm excited to announce that for this video, we have partnered with Whop.com, WHOP.com. Whop is an all-in-one marketplace for sports communities and other digital products. If you're looking to find communities on all things sports, sports capping, sports betting, and sports fandom, head to Whop.com/sports. They're the all-in-one digital marketplace, the Amazon of the future for digital products. I'm incredibly proud and excited to be partnering, so make sure to go check that out. You can click the link in our description and our comments. Thank you to Whop for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you guys for tuning in.
Check it out.
Step back, James Harden, right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey.
Joel Embiid.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap podcast. I'm very happy to be back. It is me and Sean Barnard as usual. Sean, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, back at it with you, James. Feels good to be back on the sticks together. So, Sixers plugging along, everything's going. So, life is good.
Yeah, man. So interesting stretch here. We haven't talked in a little bit. We'll cover the last, 3, 4, 5 games. Just kind of go through everything. Obviously, Embiid missing the last two, 2 or 3. Last 3 games with left foot soreness. So a lot of little different lineups to going small at times. Just generally, what are you seeing from the Sixers right now?
Yeah, overall, I've kind of enjoyed the little bit of the change up, fast pace. We see the highs and the lows of James Harden, I guess.
Yeah.
In that Pistons game, we saw pretty much the easiest triple double I think anybody has ever seen on a basketball court. Him kind of just doing his thing through that game, controlling every bit of it. And then we've also seen the games where he kind of hasn't looked locked in. And James Harden is not at a point in his career where if he's not fully locked in, he can kind of carry a team in the way that maybe used to be the case. So, but I don't know. It's been interesting seeing some extended opportunity. Montrezl Harrell showing some signs of life. D-ball Paul looking good. So, been good to see these guys. It's important to give Embiid a little bit of time off. It's not something I'm super concerned about. He's upgraded to questionable ahead of tomorrow's game, so sounds like he should be back for that one. And good, he got a couple games off. He needs it. So overall, I've been pretty happy.
Yeah, and I think with the Embiid stuff, I mean, from what you're really seeing, I don't know how much of that. Obviously, I'm sure that he's healing some injuries or taking some time off to do that, but I don't think this is anything that people should be worried about too much. It kind of feels like it was a scheduled rest in a way. Doc said it was originally like no timetable for return, but it wasn't being like really harshly evaluated. So I think this is something where Embiid needed a break. He gets a good one, and they still compete at high level because they have a guy like James Harden, obviously Tyrese Maxey getting his footing back as well. Coming back from that injury with Maxey, he started off a little bit slow. The minutes were pretty low, and he wasn't in the starting lineup. Ramping back up here, you feel like Maxey's fully back to himself.
Yeah, he's definitely getting there. It's interesting. This is a kid who really has been healthy his entire life, and like this is
Yeah,
the longest stretch without basketball that he's gone. And he spoke pretty openly about how hard that was for him, just having to stay completely off his feet. Because we know what a workaholic he is. We
yeah,
know what an energetic guy, and just the way he's constantly moving, constantly doing things. So it was a change of pace to kind of have that time off. And with a foot injury, it's not something that you can really like work through. Like you pretty much just got to stay off it, rest it, and let it heal. And he's looked good since he goes back. We saw a little bit of the rust when things first kicked off. And as expected from based on the time off and just the way he plays with speed, a little bit of out of control driving, stuff like that. But since then, he's kind of shaking it off. He's an important player to this team, man, and he's so fun to watch. So it's great to see him kind of having his array of finishing coming back. That change of pace is super essential to the Sixers team, and it's just a nice kind of bright light to have him on the court.
yeah, man, absolutely. It was weird to not see him around. It felt
Yeah.
wrong to have a team without Tyrese Maxey for the stretch they did, and they did end up playing well towards the latter end of his stint being out. But like, I just remember I was actually at the game where he got hurt, and then thinking back to how long ago that felt, it felt weird. That's such a long period of time without him. So don't like seeing that, but obviously I think it was nice to bring him back in kind of a slow pace, let him get his footing back under him with a player like him and the way that he plays. I feel like it does take a little bit to ramp back up. So it's nice to see him take the time. But he's been fantastic recently as well. And I know you pointed out Montrezl Harrell and Paul Reed, obviously on Sunday, having, really nice games on both ends. But Montrez has been doing this over the a little bit of this stretch, obviously without Embiid as well. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster with Montrez, right? Like it was, the preseason we're like, we like this guy a lot. Went hard, like down hard for a little bit, but he's been playing really well. And, you know, as a scorer, he's really effective in a lot of ways. Are you considering him to be, a more reliable backup at this point?
Yeah, I don't know if reliable is the right word, but definitely some signs of life. Like I'll say I've been a Montrezl Harrell guy. I've loved him since Louisville. I loved him with the Clippers. I've loved him as he's bounced around the league. He's a very fun player to watch, but he's not a perfect player by any means. Definitely has his limitations, but we're seeing the positive signs of him. The pick and roll between Montrezl Harrell and James Harden is a legitimate weapon within the Sixers offense. And a credit to Harden for just how intelligent he is as a passer, how high IQ of a basketball player is for being able to create looks. Some of these passes tucking between guys' legs, tucking it between the littlest gaps, little lobs over the top, and it's just making it happen. And it has been effective offense. And that is really the reason that Montrezl Harrell is on this team, because James Harden just needs a guy that can do that. And like Harrell, while he once again is not perfect, like he's effective at that, at having a feel for when to roll, when to catch. He's got good hands. He can catch lobs a little bit. We're seeing some signs of life in his legs, which just were not there at the beginning of the season. He's blocking some shots, which is something that really hasn't been seen from him much throughout his career. He's averaging close to 2 blocks a game over the stretch that Embiid's been out. Obviously, small sample size, but I have been very encouraged by what I've seen. I guess the little bit of a larger issue that it shifts to is I don't think I'm complaining about the backup center options at this point. Like I'm happy with Paul Reed, happy with Montrezl Harrell, happy with PJ Tucker. The thing that's the concern is that now the pressure is on Doc Rivers to pull the strings and pull the right matchups. And that's where I think the problem may come with this team.
I mean, isn't it? It always seems like it traces back to that. But yeah, I kind of want to point out like with what Montrez has been doing. And funny enough, like I think talking about backup center, he doesn't even start when Embiid is out, which is like, it's just a funny way of looking at it. He still comes off the bench, and he mentioned, I like coming off the bench. I feel more comfortable there. And he credits Lou Williams with a lot of, the mental aspect of coming off the bench. But in the 3 games that Embiid has been out and he's getting the majority of those center minutes, he goes 19 points and 5 rebounds, 17 points and 4 rebounds. And then he has a 20-point game with 6 rebounds. And then if you add in there a couple blocks, he had 4 blocks against Indiana, and then he had a block against the Pistons. Those are good numbers, and I feel like he's kind of finding a niche and, getting comfortable with James Harden. You think about the stretch where he was really bad was that portion of time where James Harden was not on the floor. Obviously, we see how lethal Harden can be as a passer and opening up a lane for Montrezl Harrell. But that kind of, it goes hand in hand with Paul Reed, who was fantastic on Sunday as well. I know you just mentioned him. And you see even at the small points in time against the Bulls late in that game, they went to Paul Reed and like, obviously they didn't win the game, but he was putting pressure on them. He was making things happen. And it's just like a spark, defensively that is a little bit different than what Montrez gives offensively. We haven't seen much of Paul Reed through this stretch until Embiid was out. Do you think that there's a chance that the way he's been playing could help him, get into more regular rotation minutes?
Yeah, it absolutely should. I mean, Paul Reed yesterday in the Pistons win set the Sixers season high in offensive rebounds with 8 on the game, which he had 5 in 10 minutes in his first half stint. Nobody had recorded 5 since November when 5 offensive rebounds since November when Joel Embiid did it with 7 as the high on the year. And then Paul Reed goes in and cracks that in 24 minutes of play, which is impressive stuff. The motor he plays with is just infectious, and he just never takes his eyes off the ball. And he's doing some like legitimately like good things as far as putbacks, catching lobs. Like it feels like he has like it has been like reeled in a little bit. Like he's not as scatterbrained, not as wild, just throwing stuff against the walls. He's a little more in control of his game, has a little bit more of just like doing the basics more in a way that's helping his team. There were even a couple yesterday that I thought he should have gone back up with, that he was comfortable kicking out to his teammates. He had Niang in the corner for one that was beautiful. Off a Niang missed a 2 for the dollar, set him up there. I'm great. I'm happy to see the progress from Paul Reed, especially in like the limited opportunity he's getting. He deserves a chance. And once again, not a perfect player. Like he has his issues, but there's definitely matchups that he should be used in. And there's times where he really helps his team. And I'm thrilled to see him progressing, because he is a better player than we saw last year, which I'm happy for that to be the case.
Yeah, we've been raving about him. I know a lot of people are on this train with Paul Reed, and it is interesting to see the fluctuation. I felt like after the end of last season and going to the playoffs and the way that he played in that playoff run, like I really genuinely felt like he deserved to come in with as a regular rotational player. He hasn't seen much of that this year. The resiliency is commendable. He's been fantastic as an energy guy, on and off the court. So, props to Paul Reed in that end. It's got to be a difficult job to never really know what your role is going to be.
Yeah.
And we saw Tyrese and him struggle with that early on. Like Tyrese in his first year had talked about that. But it's tough with him. I think that with PJ Tucker being able to kind of be the stretch big or whatever you want to call him. But I genuinely think that in those games or in certain areas where you need rebounding, like Paul Reed defensively as a rebounder, when Embiid, he's being pulled every which way as an anchor to this defense. Paul Reed is a great guy to pair with him, and we really haven't seen much of that combination yet. Something I would consider doing. I know you probably agree, right?
Yeah, I absolutely want to see, and I just all around more versatility. I'm still at the point of the season where they're like, let's just try some things, see what works. And I absolutely want to see the Paul Reed and Joel Embiid sharing the court together, because he's just the do the dirty work guy. Like he's willing to go commit to trying to get every offensive board. He doesn't need the ball a ton on offense. He'll stay out of the way. Like he looks comfortable chilling in the dunker spot, doing all that. Let's see it. And for Embiid, like as much as we're complaining about, like he's not career low, but since his rookie year low in rebounds, under 10 rebounds per game for like that's just not his thing. Like 3 below his career average, which is pretty crazy. Like let's just let him be okay being a huge wing that scores at this point in the season. And now I will be more strict about it, I guess, on Embiid, and more upset about it if this continues, like come postseason time when with that. But at this point in the season, like let's give Paul Reed some time to show some shine and free up the star to do his thing.
Yeah, but like I think it's not even just like defensively, dude. Like Paul Reed is the wing defender like that you have. When you think about it, there's only, I mean, obviously PJ does a job, but like it's not like Paul Reed is more comfortable guarding a 5 than he would be a 3. And to me, it just blows my mind that they haven't really, like, I think that unlocks everything. He's a relentless, lengthy, annoying defender, and then you pair that with one of the best rim protecting bigs in the entire league. That's wreaking havoc everywhere. You add D'Anthony Melton into that mix. Hell, if you want to add Thybulle into that mix, like if you wanted to create a defensive monster, you really start with the anchor of Embiid, and then you just surround him with length and aggressive defenders. And then, I mean, obviously there's gonna be breakdowns, but man, that could go crazy on a lot of different ways, and they just haven't done it. And then talk about a big that's comfortable in the dunker spot. Like, do we really want him operating with the ball anywhere outside of that area? Like, not really. So he's a guy that can just plant himself there. I don't know. To me, it just feels like it makes sense. Maybe I'm missing something, but in my mind, when I think about the possibilities, it gets really exciting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've been firm on it since the beginning that he, to me, strikes me as the type of player who is only going to get better, like playing through his mistakes. Like you just kind of got to give him a little leash and let him have it. And what has continually jumped out at me about Paul Reed, specifically as the backup center role that we've talked about traditionally with Embiid, which has obviously been like the gaping hole on the Sixers team, it gets picked apart more than anything in the playoffs if your big man can't switch on to guards. Like this is why Nikola Jokic could not play in the crunch time possessions for the Nuggets. That when they needed to stop, they had to take the back-to-back MVP out of the game because he was incapable of guarding guards. That is not the case with Paul Reed. Paul Reed can switch on to guys, and we've seen that. And the Sixers have had plenty of guys. We can go down the list of guys who were played off the court who could not do that, because it is a fairly difficult trait. And when every possession matters so much in the postseason, they're absolutely going to circle that and just play guys until they won't keep on the court. And it happens every year. It happened with Amir Johnson, with Boban Marjanovic, with all these backup centers that were tried. Paul Reed is like capable of switching on anybody, and just that ability to guard guards is something that like earned him minutes in the playoffs last year, and is just worth continuing to develop in my mind.
Yeah, and when you add that, like, it doesn't have to be huge minutes, right? Like, you have the other options, and then you also have a guy like PJ Tucker, who we've seen, not just in regular season games against the Pistons, but literally in the playoffs against some of the best teams that have ever played, play the 5 and be successful to a good degree. So, like, if you really wanted to just mix it in for a little bit, you could do it, and it really can't hurt, because the energy that he brings for at least a certain period of time is going to amount to something good. So let's hop off the Paul Reed hype train here. We spent a good amount of time talking about it. We could probably spend the rest of the time. But I do want to talk about James Harden and what he does bring, and as a facilitator. But like you said, at times you see the best and worst without Embiid, without another guy that's going to take the scoring load. He's obviously taken a back seat in that, in that sense, on this offense. What are you seeing from him right now? What could he be better at? But really, in general, he's been very good this season. So what does he bring, as the version of him that we've been seeing recently?
Yeah, I mean, he's brilliant as a basketball player. I think it's continually doesn't get noticed enough, just the way he can process a defense, make reads in the pick and roll, everything like that. His playmaking is by far and away the best part of his game at this point in his career. But there's also something so different about first off the step back three, which has been the exclamation point throughout his entire
Yeah,
career. That little if he's hitting that, which there's no way to guard it, he's getting that off. But the thing about it is it opens up everything. That's so crucial to his offense, because if he's not hitting it, teams are not going to be guarding heavily to that, and he's not going to get to the rim. Is essentially the progression of that. Do you remember when teams were literally standing on the side of him guarding him,
behind him.
protecting
Yeah,
him?
Ricky Rubio with the
Yeah,
hands behind the back. Yeah,
think about how crazy that is, of how much that changed him. And now, granted, he's never going to get that type of respect again. He's I believe he's a career 36% 3-point shooter. He's not an elite knockdown shooter. But anyway, my point being that the 3-pointer is so vital to his game, and it feels like the nights where he can hit 3 or 4 out of his 7 attempts, he looks awesome. The nights where he hits 1 or 2, it doesn't look like a great game. And he's
yeah,
also, it's very clear that he has to have it all going. He has to be locked in on a game for him to have that imprint. And granted, a bad James Harden game is still like 20, 10, and 8 sometimes. So
yeah,
it's hard to fully critique. But that Bulls game, which
yeah,
statistically looked fine on paper, that was up there with one of the worst games I've ever seen James Harden play. Just some dumb turnovers, some looking sloppy, some no ability to separate. So I don't know. He's an interesting player, very interesting player, very smart player, and I'm happy we have him still. But I still need to see a little more from the him and Embiid connection when he comes back, and I think that should be an area of focus moving forward.
yeah. Absolutely. I think I think it's just the degree of difficulty that the threes that he's taking, the contested, the step backs, the side steps, everything that he does, is manufactured on his own. So I think there's just nights where it's difficult to get that space. But I think he's been great. It's so nice to have a guy that just controls everything, and you don't have to worry about where the ball is, or who's creating for who. We've seen Embiid, I feel get so many more um, reasonable effort buckets. There's times where he's actually just open and Harden hits him, and it's been so long since you've had a guy that just consistently gets him the ball. Like we talked about the last 2 years, how Embiid had to work so much every single night for every single bucket, and obviously he still does that, but the way Harden creates is just it helps an unspeakable amount with that. It also opens up the floor for shooters, and we've seen a great progression in that as well, and upticks in shooting percentages and things of that nature. I want to talk about George Niang, who just I was rewatching clips from last night, and just the way that he is, it cracks me up. He's been a fantastic player this season. He's continued on his work from last season as well. Obviously, the pairing next to James Harden with him, he loves it, and he jacks it up every time he touches it. And Harden told him, "Got to get 10 up tonight," that kind of deal. So it's part of the process there with him. Where is he ranking on the most important bench pieces right now?
Pretty up there. I might even give him, I don't want to say number one. D'Anthony Melton, assuming a fully constructed
Yeah,
team, and D'Anthony Melton coming off the bench is more important than George Niang. I might give Niang number 2 though, just because as far as spacing the floor has been the name of the game with the Sixers team forever. There is no one on this roster, maybe no one in this league, with a quicker release than George Niang. Just the way
yeah,
he is so willing to shoot it, the way he only jumps 3 inches off the ground and still gets his shot off, and just
yeah,
he's big enough that he can shoot over guys. My new little saying is he makes up for the lack of quickness with his thickness, is him just willing to embrace guys, puts his body on the line. He's awesome. And
yeah,
another guy who just brings the energy, is willing to do it. And like you mentioned with the stuff with Harden, they run the little kind of fade screens where he just kind of runs by, forces his defenders to make a decision, and it's either Harden getting the switch that he's kind of seeking out, or it's a Niang 3-point attempt. And
yeah,
he has been such a knockdown shooter. his whole career really, but specifically since he came to the Sixers, that it's great to have. Like, that's necessary on every NBA team nowadays. And he's like probably my most comfortable shooter at this point. Like a good 3-point look by George Niang is one of my like most comforting outcomes in an offensive set.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel confident when he puts that up, and I know he's, way more confident in it than even I am.
Yeah.
And it's great to see a guy like that. Like, we talk about spark plugs with, Montrez off the bench, and you even think about guys like Maxey just being in there as a spark plug, but like George is the, embodiment of that word. He is immediately the shot goes in, he's yelling at somebody, smacking his own head. He's yelling at people to get out of his way, get him out of here, or whatever. Like, it's fantastic. It's exactly what this team needs. And offensively, it's such a nice cushion to have. Like, and even when he's not open, he'll still shoot it and he'll still make it sometimes. So it's good to have a guy we've talked about for years. Like, just have a guy that has no conscience. And
Yeah.
Seth Curry was up there, but we always complained about how he should have shot more.
Mhm.
And George is that. He's going to shoot it no matter what. If he thinks he can get it up, he's going to go for it. So it's been really nice having a guy willing to do that. Shake Milton's been fantastic as well. I know I want to point him out. Talked a little bit about D-Melt. We'll talk about him in a minute because he is, I think, more of a starting piece right now. But Milton off the bench as well. What have you been seeing from Shake?
Yeah, Shake's been good. I think he's taken a little bit of a step back in recent games he was obviously on a tear for like kind of this middle stretch of the season, specifically the shorthanded. Shake's a guy who the more minutes he gets, the better he tends to look, which is a difficult situation based on where he ranks on this team. But it's still nice to have that like additional ball handler. He's still doing a little bit more than just scoring. Like to me, looks better as a passer. He's willing to kind of fight for rebounds a little bit, which is important. Like they need that as well. He can't just be a microwave scorer.
Yeah.
They have other guys that can do that at this point. And like I said, another guard is important. So it's good to have that. I'm curious what the future has for Shake, whether it's on the Sixers or elsewhere, what his market kind of is. I'm not really locked in on what my belief on him as a player is. I've been down on him at times. I've been up at him at times. I don't know, but he's good to have on the team for now. At the minimum, it's some depth. It wouldn't fully shock me if he's a guy that ends up not in a Sixers uniform next year, or even towards the end of the season, though.
Yeah, I've always had an affinity for Shake. I think that the ability is like no question at all. It's there. He's very skilled and he's smooth and he plays at his own pace. He can get a shot up anytime he wants, basically, just because of his length and athleticism. It's a quirky game that he has, and I just really enjoy watching him play. So I think I've always been pretty partial to him. But yeah, he's had his ups and downs. I think for the most part this season he's been really good. In the role that he's had, again, it's changed a good amount too. Just in Maxey's absence, he played pretty well. But like you said, getting more minutes and being able to settle into a game, I think just more consistency as a shooter. I think he's improved a lot there as well. But continuing that will just help him get on the court more and stay on the court more. But I really, I like Shake a lot. It's just like he doesn't really play with that well next to Harden, so it's kind of hard in that sense too. But to move into a guy that is perfect next to Harden, and I think has caught the eye of every Sixers fan out there, Anthony Melton has been. I don't think anything short of what we expected, but probably a good amount more than what we expected from him. Didn't score at all, I don't think at all last night, which is unlike him. But still, he comes in. He's been fantastic this season, on both sides of the ball. He's kind of eaten up those defensive minutes that we thought Matisse would get, although Matisse is finding his way into the rotation. But just offensively as well, great floor spacer, not afraid to shoot it. Another guy that'll just pull from wherever. And a guy that I feel like has hit a good amount of like clutch shots and is a really reliable option, especially with a team of guys that draw a lot of attention. He's been a fantastic look outside when things start to crumble towards the paint. D'Anthony Melton, just kind of sum up his recent stretch and how well he's been, even with 3 guard lineups, no matter what it is. Just kind of explain his importance to this team so far.
Yeah, a guy that is perfect with any player. Like he can play with anyone, which is guys that the Sixers have not had enough of. He is a willing shooter. He swallows guys up defensively. His hands are everywhere. The thing that jumps out to me about D'Anthony Melton is we've always kind of oohed and ahed over Matisse's ability to kind of either block from behind or pick off passes, and that's kind of his thing. It feels like Melton does it without sacrificing as much. Like he's not like jumping out of his way to do something. He's still kind of with his guy with the float, and he manages to just find a way to get his hand in there or read a play in a way that like doesn't put the team in a bad position if he does get burnt, which he really doesn't get burnt on it, which is amazing. And the 3-point shooting has far exceeded my expectation. I can't wait to see what happens in the playoffs, because Grizzlies fans are still like, wait till you see him in the playoffs. Like,
Yeah.
And statistically, he's not been good come postseason, but like, I just can't imagine. Like, this guy, he really does seem perfect for what the Sixers need. He's a perfect modern NBA player, a guy that is an electric athlete, gets out on the fast break, good shooter. He just seems to bring it all. So I'm very happy he's here. He's a perfect addition, especially the defensive emphasis he brings next to guys like Maxey and Harden. So happy he's wearing a Sixers jersey.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been telling all my friends like that we love him. It's kind of like a meme with me and my friends now. Like whenever they come over to watch a game, it's like we love him. He's fantastic. That was what they asked me about him. You know, what should we expect from Melton this year? And I just said we love Melton, and that's it. It's really that simple. He's a basketball player's basketball player. He's a guy that does all the dirty work, and then will stretch the floor and not ask for much. And then when you don't expect it, he's cutting you up and throwing down a dunk. He's very fun to watch. Defensively, he's been a help rebounding wise. He does some things on a nightly basis where I'm like, that was really impressive just athletically, catching the ball, one-handed, reaching back. He's a really impressive player. I think when you look at, the playoff numbers and, that's being brought up with the Anthony Melton. And again, this is absolutely no slight to Ja. He's a fantastic player at all. But when you think about the type of player that he is, a lot of isolation, a lot of attacking his guy, and not as much playmaking as James Harden, I think as a guy that's going to benefit from a catch and shoot, from attacking a closeout and, drawing attention from different situations. I think it's an entirely different role, within this offense, just because his opportunities might be a little bit more limited, but they're, a higher opportunity for him to do something correct. So I think he's gonna be fine here. I really don't see how he could be bad. And when you think about defensively what this team lacks, a perimeter defender, he's fantastic. Obviously, he's going to go for the smaller guys, point guards and a smaller two, but he's a guy that can really help on that front. And then to kind of move into another guy, Matisse Thybulle has been, it's been a kind of a weird year for him. It feels like almost every year has been though, but he's finding his way back, and it feels like a lot of people have just recently turned the page, as he's, coming out. The advanced numbers are showing all of his lineups play very well, and in the the plus minus department, they've been really good. So what are you making of that? It's kind of been a Matisse renaissance over the last 2 weeks. What are you kind of making of that situation right now?
Yeah, I don't entirely know. To me, he's a little bit of an anomaly in the way where I look through the numbers frequently. I see all the benefits it brings, but it just doesn't quite match my eye.
Yeah.
He like, there's still moments. He had 6 steals in the game against the Pistons yesterday. He deserves to play some. Like, I'm not saying he should be locked to the bench. I'm still concerned to postseason time, the deficiencies, but like, I also think they get overstated, and I overstate them at times, because guys are willing to test their luck, even if it is George's Niang. They're still willing to help on Embiid. They're still willing to help on Harden. So it almost doesn't matter. To give Matisse credit, he has looked more willing as a shooter. He's had a couple games where he's made multiple 3-pointers, which is very rare for him. He's even dribbled into a 3-pointer this year, had a couple moments where he's showing something, doing a little bit of attack off the dribble himself. So there's some signs of life offensively, which is intriguing. I want to like Matisse. I want to be all in on him. He deserves a little bit of time on the court and should continue at least being somewhat in the rotation, but I'm still not entirely sold. I guess he's a concrete part of the Sixers, fabric, but I know he's your guy. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, we had a kind of a meltdown a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago it was, where just like there's things that are very frustrating about Matisse that he hasn't, I'm sure he's worked on, but like just hasn't translated fully
Not
yet.
fouling on 3-pointers, basically.
Not that, yeah. I mean, that specifically was very, that one just like hurts a little. But with him, it's so unique. Like you said, his situation is so specific to him. I don't know that we've seen something like that on the Sixers before. It's obviously happened before where really good defensive players don't play very good offense, but he is, like you said, just left alone so often. And there's been times in his career where, like, genuinely offensively, you're playing 4-on-5 and the defense is playing it like that. Like, they're doubling somebody and they're okay with him catching the ball. Like you said, he's been a little bit more willing. I think in certain situations. He fits in lineups well. And like you said, the advanced metrics are telling us he's a very positive player and he contributes to good lineups. But I don't know. It's like you said, it doesn't always meet the eye the same way. But I
And
don't know, man. It's hard to tell.
And I'll jump in, and he's gonna be, like, tested. Like, he can show as much willingness as he wants.
Yeah.
Teams are gonna continue to let him shoot it until, like, he really proves he can knock it down, and his three-point numbers have gone up a ton. He started off the year extremely poor from 3 and is climbing back up just around league average now, which is all you really need to see from him,
Yeah.
but the willingness needs to continue. Like, if he starts turning down threes again, then it's like then you gotta think about, like, does he have a rotation spot? Because Doc has shown that he is willing to pull the plug on him and not let that be the case already this year. But I don't know. I would like to see Matisse kind of find himself. He's still a guy with a ton of potential. Like, I've definitely been frustrated by the lack of improvement, lack of growth so far, but he's still 25 years old and still has some unique gifts that, like, you can't grow on any players. So
Yeah.
if he can put the pieces together still, there's still a bright place in the NBA for him.
Yeah. I really wish for him, and then obviously for the betterment of the team as well. But like, I hope he finds the confidence. I hope he like really believes in the fact that he can shoot. If it's like if that shot specifically that he's worked on, I'm like we've talked about, people were telling us all summer that he was in the gym and he was working and he was genuinely working on his shot. So it's there. You can see the improvements. It does look a little bit different, and it looks like he's shortened it up a bit. But I'd want to see him find that confidence. And like, obviously, he's not going to have the George Niang type confidence shooting the basketball, but take the notes, be more like him. And if you can find where you're just wide open and people are disrespecting you, like if he can find a way to be really confident in those shots, he'll fit right in because he'll find those. So I don't know. I've always liked Matisse a lot. He's had the ups and downs, but I think, like you said, if it's Daryl is all about the analytics. If he tells us that he's a good player in those lineups, who am I to argue with Daryl Morey?
Yeah, yeah, very fair. And to shift gears a little bit, and something I want to bring up is, I guess to just check your kind of thermometer on how you're feeling about this team as a whole, as far as where they fall on like the scale of legitimate contenders or still not entirely sold this year.
Yeah, it's tough right now. Like they haven't played that much together. When you think about
Yeah.
the starting five specifically, which again, I think that there's genuinely some value in that. Um, Having to have all played different roles and getting comfortable playing certain roles. I think that's a good thing. They've tested out different lineups. They've been able to do some different things. I think that's good. Obviously, you don't want anybody to be hurt or missing time. But it's really, I think it's really hard to say right now. I think that we've seen how good they can be when they are all playing together and they're playing well. And it would be hopeful. The hopeful thing is towards the end of the season, we're seeing that into a longer stretch and then headed into the postseason. And I think if they're at that level, they're a true contender in this conference. They're a top three team. Obviously, the Nets have been looking really good. So I think there's genuine hope that this is a contender. We're just going to have to see it for a more extended period of time because it hasn't been consistent enough at this point, I think, to really believe that yet.
Yeah, I agree. I still need to see a little more. The trio of Harden, Embiid, and Maxey have played 9 total games together this year.
Yeah.
So still, like you said, small sample size. Got to see more. I do want to go a little bit through the East here, just team by team, and get a little bit of your thoughts on how they stack up. If the Sixers are legitimate contenders compared to these guys, or what. So we'll start at the top with the Boston Celtics sitting at 28-12, leading the Eastern Conference. Do the Sixers have a chance in a 7-game series against the Celtics?
They actually have a chance. I wouldn't be betting on them to win that series. Boston is very good, and Boston thrives as a perimeter defensive team. And then they're just a very smart defensive team as well, and they do a lot of things right on that side of the ball. So the Sixers are going to have to, in that sense, really embrace the dogfight that would be, and if they can embrace that and be able to be successful, I think a lot of that series would depend on James Harden. I think, and his ability to score would be really, highlighted there. So I'm not picking them in that series. I got to be like realistic with everybody here. The Boston Celtics are a very, very good team.
Yeah, no, I don't think we have anybody that can guard Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. PJ Tucker is not doing that. Matisse Thybulle cannot stick those extended minutes. D'Anthony Melton is going to struggle against these
Yeah.
guys because they both are terrific. Shout out Jaylen Brown, who does not get enough credit for a guy who's just having an absolutely terrific year. And I know Jason
Yeah.
Tatum's the main guy there and the superstar of this team, but Jaylen Brown has been nothing short of excellent all year. And I really happen to like Jaylen Brown, so I'm happy to see that. And to your point, James Harden is really going to be tested in this postseason. And I know we've been like in search of that co-star for Embiid for so long that Ben Simmons was not quite that guy. Joel Embiid is going to pick up like a significant amount of defensive attention as expected. It's going to be on James Harden for at least stretches of time to absolutely lead the Sixers team in scoring. And that's, to me, it might end up being like the make or break for if this team can make a run.
Yeah. It's tough. The window, like that window it feels like it's closing on that end, but I don't know, man. It's really tough to say. Like, I need to see, like I said, I need to see them all play together. Obviously, like, again, the Boston Celtics, I think, are probably the best team right now in the entire league. And I think that they're playing very good basketball and a little bit surprisingly, right? Not in terms of talent wise, but they had a whole blow up at the beginning of the season. They've been playing for a different coach, and it's like they really have not missed a beat at all. So, kudos to them. It's, rare that I would be outwardly giving the Boston Celtics a lot of credit, but they've been really good. But they've been a full team, and they've been able to, continue through a long postseason run, and they're gelling at a really high pace. But the Sixers haven't had that chance yet. So I would just need. I'm so confident that they can be a real contender. It's just right now with that, it's tough.
Yeah, and we'll just run through the top three in the East because I do think those are kind of the true contenders. Next up is the Brooklyn Nets, who, as you alluded to, are playing much better basketball lately. Kevin Durant suffering an MCL sprain, so never like to see a guy injured. Sending good vibes to Kevin Durant, but do you think the Sixers can win a series against the Brooklyn Nets?
Yes, I think they can. Again, it's the defensive aspect is what comes into play here with Kevin Durant. Hopefully being healthy, he poses a really large concern, right? Like, he's one of the best scorers in the world right now. Kyrie's been playing fantastic basketball, also can score from anywhere. And like I said, in that series, like D'Anthony Melton becomes exponentially more important, right?
Yeah.
He's becomes the guy that's going to chase him around the majority of the night. I think what we've seen, and it's going to be funny to come out of my mouth. You can expose one player on their offense,
Say it.
and then when you talk about Nick Claxton, um, but like Ben Simmons is not a scorer. He's historically struggled in the playoffs, and Nick Claxton, while a fantastic defender and playing really, really good defense, is also a guy that does not his play style doesn't read as consistently in the playoffs either. Him and Ben Simmons are playing on the court at the same time. Um, that is something that could lead to a disastrous offensive set in the playoffs. We've seen it happen before, and that was with a center that can play good offense. Ben Simmons, their connection there might hold them back offensively.
Yeah, I'm not even saying this to like troll or be whatever. I think Nick Claxton's like significantly more important to the Nets than Ben Simmons is. I think he's exactly what they need as far as filling in. And it's so sad that Nick Claxton is the guy that Ben Simmons is like modeling his game after at this point. And you're seeing it with watching the Nets lately. Like they're weaning away at Ben's minutes. He's barely playing fourth quarters anymore. They're playing him like 10 to 12 minutes less than the other starters, which is insane considering like
Yeah.
just how the mighty have fallen, I guess. And I will never pick Ben Simmons to win a playoff series against Joel Embiid ever. I just can't see a universe where that ever goes down, even with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The only
Yeah.
way which I see it happens, and the Nets have been playing terrific basketball of late, but the only way I can see it happens is if Jacques Vaughn who has shown the guts that it takes to really coach this team, if he's willing to like bench Ben Simmons and use the pieces that are necessary to win, because they have other guys. Royce O'Neal's been terrific. The Nick Claxton, like I said, has been like exactly what they need. I've been super impressed with him. He's like, in my mind, in the defensive player of the year conversation this year, and just how good he's been. Yuta Wannabe is just knocking down 3-pointers at an unreal rate. So they do have like pieces they can work. Seth Curry, of course. So I'm not going to count the Nets out, and I think there's pieces there that you can put together. But if Ben Simmons is a key part of your playoff game plan, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, and you're gonna like I was talking about this literally today at lunch. I'm like, honestly, if there's not a really strong defensive system or a big that can even like hope to guard Embiid, I genuinely think that Sixers have a chance against anybody. So I think going into this playoffs, the way that he's been playing, the way Harden's been able to get him the ball at times, like when you think about Embiid, I think there's going to have to be like we see, when you talk about the Celtics, fantastic defensive system, right? Like just an absolute unit that's cohesive on all fronts. Like they play just a great team basketball. The Nets, we've seen them be a lot better defensively, but I just don't think that that unit is this playing the same caliber of defense that the Celtics would be. So I think, in that series, when you think about what Embiid would be able to do, and Claxton is obviously fantastic, body wise, just not able to hang. I think that matchup helps a lot. And that's what I'd be looking at when considering who's going to beat who in a series.
Yeah, all very fair. And yeah, we will see when the time comes. The last team that I do want to bring up is the Milwaukee Bucks, who of course won a championship late, have proven that they can do it at the highest level, sitting at 25-14 on the season. How much do the Milwaukee Bucks scare you in comparison to the Sixers?
I don't know. I mean, Giannis is fantastic. Like
For sure.
Giannis is an MVP caliber player. He's, one of, if not the best player in the entire league, and he has been for a good amount of time now. So any team that has Giannis is going to be, really difficult to contain in a playoff series. I think they really have. You talk about a team that hasn't played much together. The Milwaukee Bucks have hardly played together at all with their, best three players. Brook Lopez obviously missing a lot of time, and Drew Holiday is fantastic, but I think he's, on the backside of, his prime. And I think the Sixers contend in this series. I think that they have a chance to beat the Bucks. I feel like, again, when you talk about Embiid and, those matchups, I think the Sixers and Bucks have always really matched up pretty well. And there's always been great battles. I think that would be a fantastic series, and I would genuinely and just enjoy that that series. It would go 6 or 7.
Yeah, no, I think any of these combinations are going to be deep playoff series for sure. What sneaky scares me about the Bucks is Brook Lopez. I think he's like a legitimate issue from a matchup and like game plan situation. And why I feel that way is because he's one of the few guys who can stand toe to toe with an Embiid and at least like make him work and keep with him in the post. And defensively, if we're going to put Embiid on Lopez, he's a guy who purely stands by the 3-point line. And that takes Embiid away from the paint, takes him away from the rim. I think the Sixers would have to put Embiid on Giannis, and then you run the same issues of Giannis is just going to do his pick up ahead of steam, drive to the basket, and that's a difficult spot to put Embiid into. So shout out to Brook Lopez for reinventing himself in the way that he is and becoming the player that he is, because he creates some real matchup nightmares in the way that the way that he plays and the way he optimizes their team. So that's something that I think the Sixers would have to get a little bit creative with, because it causes some issues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it absolutely does. And I think with all of these, the question again becomes like, what does Doc do? But genuinely, I think there's times where Doc has been really good. And going through all of these stretches with and without players, there's some credit to be had there. But I think that's going to be a question to come into play a lot this postseason with just the way the last few years have gone. But again, I think we're really looking forward to this team getting back to full strength and being hopefully coming back soon. And then they'll be able to go into this, a good stretch of time where hopefully they can all stay healthy going into the All-Star break, which is where I think we'll leave this episode off. There's been a lot of speculation about who would start in the All-Star game. The four between Tatum, Durant, Giannis, and Embiid. Only 3 of those guys could start, obviously, with Kevin Durant maybe missing some time here. If he's not healthy by the All-Star break, he won't be playing in that game, and all 3 of those guys can start. But there's been a lot of speculation over who would be the one to have to come off the bench in the All-Star game. Who would you consider to be that player?
I mean, first off, I'll give my answer. I won't cop out. But first off, it's ridiculous that it's so positionally based. It is nonsense in today's NBA that, I think you could make a legitimate argument all 4 of these guys have played the best basketball in the entire NBA for stretches.
Yeah.
And we're leaving one of them off the starting lineup. It's the same reason it's ridiculous to me that Joel Embiid will likely go his entire career without winning an All-NBA first team, which is just absurd, just insane. He was back-to-back runner-up in MVP voting and doesn't have an All-NBA first team. And I get it because he's the quote-unquote second best center in this situation. But just the way the game has changed, how positionless basketball has come, it's absolute nonsense as that's the case. With all that being said, I think it's going to be Kevin Durant that's left off, especially due to injury. if it wasn't due to injury, I would make Jason Tatum the guy that's left off. I think he's just a notch below these guys, and he has cooled off of late. He started this year terrifically. He has not been as good of late, and kind of as I mentioned when we brought up the Celtics, it's been Jaylen Brown that has been the money man for that team for many games this year when it's come to crunch time. So for me, it's Jason Tatum, who's a little bit notch below those other three on this list, but all great players for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. Maybe you want to call it a little bit biased, but obviously JT's fantastic. Out of all the guys that have played for that team, I think I've been I admit very easily that he is a fantastic player, and it's taken me a lot to do that in other cases, but he is fantastic. So it's really hard, and like you said, I think the positions and especially in the All-Star game, like really it doesn't matter. And all those guys deserve to start in that game, and hopefully KD will be healthy by then. I do always love the draft picks now that they get to pick the guys on both sides. So it'd be interesting to see that again and see who gets picked where. But if you're all good, I think that we can wrap up there.
Yeah, definitely. So appreciate all you guys for tuning in. A lot to find out about this Sixers team still this year. So make sure to keep in touch. Drop a like, drop a subscribe, follow us on all the socials. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in, and we will talk with you next time.